This is going to be a video that I really did not want to make, but considering the massive backlash between Disney and especially today, I have no choice but to vent out my frustrations. In the past few years, and more so in the past few months, there have been several videos talking about the demise of Disney and how one day they are going to be dead. Which, in reality, they are not going to die because of the massive amount of money that they have, but also the realism that they are too big to fall. And there may be some people that may think that I am a shill or a defender for a multi-billion-dollar company that does not care about me as an individual. Well, not really. I have my own personal gripes with this company, especially since I talked about some of my own issues with Disney through my Disney Funding Evolution videos. But at the same time, in the third video of my DFE series, I vented about how people think Star Wars is gonna die and how Disney's killing it off, which I debunked all of those claims very hastily at the end of that video, so a lot of people have some mixed receptions of my stance on Disney. So today, I want to be talking about some of my own personal vendettas that I have against Disney in order to win some of my street credit back. A lot of my opinions may not reflect the objective opinion online, so let's talk about an issue that everyone will agree with me. So first off, the live-action remakes. They suck and they are completely unnecessary. Considering that the Disney Vault is wide open thanks due in part by streaming services and more so Disney+, are there any reasons to keep making these inferior remakes to the original films that are easily accessible as long as you have a $15 monthly subscription? I don't want to hark on the live-action remakes too much in this video because one day I do plan on making a video critiquing why I believe Beauty and the Beast is the worst live-action remake, so I'll go over all of those complaints and issues that I have with these movies whenever I get the chance to dissect that movie, because I believe that everybody has that one live-action remake that they consider to be the worst. For some people it's Aladdin, some people it's Lion King, for me it's Beauty and the Beast, and I will explain that whenever I get to that particular video. Another issue that I have with these live-action remakes that I want to bring up in this video is the mass production of these movies. The fact that a lot of these movies came out in the span of 5 years, and it doesn't look like it's going to be stopping anytime soon, just really shows the lack of creativity that this company has, especially when they're planning on making a Moana remake, all to boost The Rock's ego. And one final point I want to make in this video regarding these films, because these movies make a lot of money for the company, Disney has pretty much neglected 2D animation, which used to be their backbone of the entire company. I talked about this briefly in my Disenchanted video last year, but it does ring true that all of these remakes are dull, unsaturated, all the colors are muted, the animated characters look uglier in live action compared to how they looked in 2D animation, plus the fact that live action has more restrictions and limitations compared to the endless possibilities that 2D animation offers. But once again, I will talk about more of these issues in depth whenever I get to that video. So another issue that I want to talk about in this video are the Disney parks and resorts. I haven't been to Disney World in 10 years, but from what I've heard in the past few years, I don't plan on going to Disney in the near future. My main issue is that they overprice everything. I get that Disney wants to make up all of the money they lost after COVID, but price gouging literally everything is not the best way to do it. Take the Galactic Star Cruiser for example. Disney was expecting a family of 4 to spend $6,000 for a 3-day, 2-night stay at a live-action role-playing Star Wars hotel based on a trilogy that not a lot of people liked, where you only have access to one section of one out of the 4 parks in Orlando. That sounds completely asinine, and thankfully it caught up to Disney because now Galactic Star Cruiser has closed. Unfortunately, I would have loved to go on it, sequel trilogy or not, but I am not spending $1,000 to $2,000 just to experience this. Another issue I have is the removal of quality of life features that were found in the park. Not only that, but the fact that they have replaced FastPass, which was the most reliable way of getting on rides in a short amount of time, with Genie and Genie Plus, where you have to spend even more money to hopefully get a chance on going on a ride on time. It just makes me feel like I'm going on less rides than I would have desired to go on if I ever wanted to go on Epcot or at Magic Kingdom. This leads me to my last point about the parks, and that's the lack of IPs. Epcot has pretty much lost its identity, where one half focuses on the different values of science and communication while reflecting on past communications and cultures from various parts of the world. Because while we still have World Showcase, Future World is now in disarray. I would have loved to go on Ellen's Energy Adventure, and I know some people may think Ellen's Energy Adventure is a little bit too tacky, it's too 90s, and it's way too dated, especially if you went on the ride in the 2010s, but I would rather see giant animatronics of dinosaurs than seeing a bunch of screens that are somewhat loosely based off of Guardians of the Galaxy. MGM Studios used to be what would happen if you went behind the scenes of movies and how they were produced, how they were made, with the center point of the park being the Great Movie Ride, where you relive through classic movie scenes and some behind-the-scenes trivia. But now that ride has been replaced with Runaway Railroad, which is based off of a Mickey Mouse show that has just recently been cancelled. Was this really worth it, Disney, to get rid of one of your most iconic attractions in favor of an attraction that's full of screens? Now, I know some people may be thinking, oh, well, just because Bob Chapek and Bob Iger has focused on a lot of attractions and rides based off of movies and TV shows, well, Michael Eisner did that as well when he used to be CEO. And yes, that's true, but there was a fair balance between original IPs and rides that were based off of TV shows and movies. So with every Living Seas with Finding Nemo, there was always an Expedition Everest around the corner. And I know making fun of Michael Eisner is a popular thing in the Disney parks landscape, but the guy did have a lot of ambition. He did have a lot of say when it came to the parks. And honestly, I feel like Disney these days just doesn't have that luster anymore. Which transitions us perfectly into my opinions with their movies. I'm just gonna say it right now, I'm not a big fan of Disney's 3D movies, mainly because they look no different than any of the movies that Pixar is currently releasing. This is my own personal belief, but I feel like Pixar and Disney use the exact same animation company and just label their movies under different names. Especially since a lot of the human models, more specifically their male human models, all have a signature button-shaped nose for nearly every one of their characters. And this is a feature that's been present in a lot of Disney movies for, I would say, the past 10 years. Not only that, but as much as I love to see creativity and new ideas, a lot of the new Disney movies aren't just as good, in my opinion. I mean, I killed off Elsa in Disney Finding Evolution, and then I brought her back. Now, I get that my opinion on these newer Disney and even Pixar films are mostly subjective, but if there's one thing that I will say is kind of objective, is the fact that Disney does not market any of these movies. When Strange World was coming out last year, I didn't even know it was going to be in theaters until the day before it came out. And the same thing with Elemental, which thankfully was able to win back all of its money through international releases and re-releasing the film here in America. But that also leads into a big gripe I have with Disney as a whole, and that's the self-cannibalism that's at the box office in movie theaters. Let's take the summer that just passed for example. So at the end of May, we had Little Mermaid, which again is a live-action remake, which I'll talk more about in my Beauty and the Beast review. The next week or week and a half, we have Spider-Verse, which I know it's not a mainline Disney film, but because Sony is using Marvel characters and they are associated with the company, which is owned by Disney, I would call it half of a Disney film. Then you had Dial of Destiny later that month, which is another Disney film, even though it's under Lucasfilm. Then you had Elemental, a Pixar movie, and lastly, you had Haunted Mansion, which can I bring up the fact that why would Disney want to release a Haunted Mansion movie in July and not October? It makes no sense. But in other words, Disney had at least 4.5 movies all competing for one another at the box office. And would you believe it? There was going to be a fifth. The Marvels was supposed to come out in July, but they pushed it back to November. If it still kept that original release date, we would have had nearly 6 Disney movies at once in the box office, self-cannibalizing one another. This is not a healthy state in the movie-making business. It ruins the opportunities for other movie studios to get their films up and running because it's always Disney at the forefront. And before I end this segment, I want to briefly once again talk about how Disney has neglected 2D animation in favor of 3D animation. The last feature-length 2D animated movie Disney has made was Princess and the Frog 14 years ago. Now, most people like to count Winnie the Pooh in 2011, but because the movie doesn't crack the 1-hour mark, I don't consider it a feature-length film. And because of the fact that it's nearly been 15 years since their last 2D animated film, the fact that Disney is not even interested in hiring any 2D animators, which have more creative output than 3D or live-action directors or animators, the fact that they rush a lot of their productions, look no further than Frozen 2 and the production nightmare that movie went through, but it doesn't even matter, because as long as the movie makes infinitely more money than the budget of the film, why else should anybody care? If a movie with a $300,000 budget fails and bombs, oh well, there's 5 other $300,000 budget movies on the horizon, and we know guaranteed that one of them is going to make all of the money that those other movies lost. The fact that Disney is so keen on having nearly $1 million budget and expecting that one of those films can make at least $10 billion is really jarring, and it's not a healthy state on how to make a movie. It just makes people less motivated in making a movie knowing that they're going to bomb anyway. And my last 2 takes are going to be fairly short. I'm not that big of a Marvel person. Sure, I'll go see an MCU movie, but only if my friends are going. I only go out of obligation. But I can admit that a lot of the visual effects in the later movies and even some of the TV shows are really jarring and bad, but thankfully there has been a lot of reconsideration, especially in their TV show department, where only now they're trying to unionize visual effects artists, which could potentially lead into another strike for visual effects animators, which is really great for them, but that also means they won't be rushed into making another production. And of course, I have to talk about it. Let's talk about Star Wars very briefly, because I am planning on making another video talking about my relationship with Disney Star Wars and how I fell out of the Phantom Menace. That's right, I fell out of it, not into it. But if there's one thing I will say at the moment is that a lot of their Disney Plus shows have really bad pacing issues. Sometimes a show doesn't need 6 episodes. Sometimes a show needs more than 7 episodes. And sometimes the runtime for each episode should be at an equilibrium. I shouldn't spend 1 week watching a TV show episode that's 30 minutes, and then the next week I'm watching an hour-long episode of the same show. It doesn't make any sense. But again, I will talk about my own personal issues with Star Wars and my relationship with a lot of toxic assholes that are on the internet that have a million times more subscribers and followers than me. So that was my current issues that I have with Disney. But I don't want to be a negative Nancy and say that Disney's going to just dig a hole for themselves even further. No, instead, I want to talk about what they could do to improve their image. One thing that I do hope for Disney to do, especially in their parks, is to add in more innovations. No pun intended. I feel like if they actually decided to create a ride that's based off of original characters and original story, I think it'll revitalize a lot of the charm and effort that Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and even a little bit of Animal Kingdom and MGM Studios had back in the day. Another thing that I also want to see with Disney is that I want to see more risks, because a lot of the live-action remakes typically follow the exact same story with little to no deviations to make that remake stand out a little bit more. And I will talk more extensively on that when I talk about my Beauty and the Beast remake review. And you might notice something with this video when talking about the current state of Disney. I have not used the word woke once throughout this entire video. Why? Mainly because I do not believe in the terminology of woke. I think woke is a really stupid word of just saying something that you don't like. And if you can't give me a proper, concrete definition of the word woke, then maybe you shouldn't use the word at all. But that's a perfect note to end this video on. So if you liked the video and agreed with some of my complaints regarding Disney, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Until then, I'm AJ, and I'll see you all in the next one.